Chapter 1, Section 5, What is a Kafir? Discussions about employment practices in Islamic context often reveal underlying doctrinal influences that are easily overlooked. One example involves a job interview with a young Moroccan woman applying for a human resources position. When asked why she wanted the role, her response was direct: because I want my relatives to always have a job. At first glance, this might appear to be simple nepotism, but within the context of Islamic doctrine, it reflects something more structured and enduring: the principle of al-wala wal-bara, meaning loyalty and disavowal. This doctrine requires loyalty to Muslims and disavowal of non-Muslims, the Kafirs. What may seem like a personal preference or family favoritism is in fact consistent with the theological obligation, Quran 48:29. Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, and those with him are forceful against the disbelievers, merciful among themselves. Hostility towards the Kafir is a consistent theme in Islam's foundational texts. There are two issues here: the amount of commentary and its type. Now, something need only be said once by Allah or Muhammad for it to become law, but it is remarkable how thoroughly deep hostility towards the Kafir is embedded in Islamic doctrine. Raison d'etre is not an exaggeration. There are many ways to refer to the Kafir: polytheist, Christian, Jew, mushrikun, idolater, wrongdoer, shirk, the worst of sins, associating others with Allah, for example, the Christian Trinity, and many more. And while all mushrikun are Kafirs, not all Kafirs are mushrikun. So the best way to determine the frequency of the term Kafir is to search the transliterated Arabic, a method that preserves consistency across translations. Here is an example from an Islamic website citing the Quranic imperative not to help the Kafirs. Quote, "This issue is not the matter of ordinary or minor sins. Rather, it is a matter that has to do with the basis of Aqidah, belief, and Tawhid, belief in the oneness of Allah, and the Muslim support and loyalty towards the religion of Allah, and his disavowal of the enemies of Allah." Quran 5:51. O you who believe, do not take the Jews and the Christians as allies. They are allies of one another, and whoever is an ally to them among you, then indeed he is one of them. Indeed, Allah guides not the wrongdoing people. Unquote. It then provides a transliteration of Quran 5:51. Now, I won't try to read that to you because it's a combination of letters that doesn't really make a lot of sense. Ya ayyuhu alathina amanu, etc. However, using this transliteration to analyze the Quran, one quickly sees that it devotes an inordinate amount of attention to the Kafir rather than the believer, detailing what they've done, why it's wrong, and how they should be treated or punished. Most people assume that religious texts focus primarily on guiding followers, not condemning those outside the faith. But that's not the case with Islam. In contrast, Judeo-Christian scriptures make no reference to Muslims, not even anticipatory ones. Yet Muhammad claimed that both Jews and Christians had tampered with their books and removed verses that mentioned him. The result is a one-sided doctrinal hostility. Islam defines itself in opposition to those who came before, while those earlier scriptures do not return the favor. Kafirs are described in many ways, none of them favorable and some openly hostile. Since the Quran uses a range of terms to refer to unbelievers, it is useful to examine the root of the word. The Kafir, Islam's most hated category. 1. Why Kafir matters, the count. Transliteration is the phonetic rendering of Arabic words using the Latin alphabet, allowing non-Arabic speakers to read Arabic terms without learning the script. In English translations of the Quran, terms derived from the Arabic kafir are often inconsistently translated as disbeliever, rejecter, or ungrateful, obscuring their shared origin and frequency. Arabic terms typically derive from three-letter roots, which are modified to form nouns, verbs, and adjectives. The root kfr appears in a wide range of forms throughout the Quran, all conveying themes of disbelief, rejection, and ingratitude. Using transliteration to trace this root, the word kafir and its variations appear nearly 500 times according to one source, 525 times according to another, and a full 593 according to legacyquran.com, which you can easily search. This status of kafir, as defined in the Quran, Hadith, and Sharia, directly affects the legal rulings, the social norms, and moral codes applied to non-Muslims within the global Islamic community, the Ummah. Two excellent tools for examining root usage and translation consistency are worth noting. The Quranic Arabic corpus offers an in-depth analysis of every verse in the Quran, including root derivations and word-by-word definitions. Additionally, the Legacy Quran search engine provides access to 7 different English translations, including transliteration, making it especially useful for tracking variant renderings of key terms such as kafir. 2. What does kafir mean in Islamic doctrine? Fully 64% of the Quranic text is about the kafir and consistently portrays them not simply as an unbeliever, but as cursed, defiled, and condemned. It is not a neutral label. It is a moral and legal designation with lasting consequences. A kafir is anyone who rejects Islam, whether passively or actively. This includes atheists, Christians, Jews, Hindus, Baha'i, Buddhists, Zoroastrians, apostates, and others. There is no middle ground. Islam divides the world into believers, the Ummah, and kafirs. Although often softened in translation as disbeliever or unbeliever, the term kafir in Islamic doctrine implies someone to be hated, cursed, and punished in this life and the next. This distinction forms the basis for the kafir's second-class status under Islamic law, where rights, protections, and social standing are significantly inferior to those of Muslims. In fact, Islamic texts go further, comparing the kafir not just to animals, but to creatures with even less value or reason. Quran 62:5. The likeness of those who are entrusted with the law of Moses, yet apply it not, is as the likeness of the ass carrying books. Quran 8:55. Indeed, the worst of creatures in the sight of Allah are those who disbelieve and they will not believe. Quran 7:179. They are like cattle. Rather, they are even more astray. The Quran's language, repetition, derision, condemnation. The Quran consistently refers to kafirs in derogatory terms, establishing a theological basis for their permanent inferior status and prescribed punishment. A few examples. The spiritual status of kafir, Quran 2:6-7, Quran 40:10, and 33:64, shows that they have sealed hearts, they are unreachable by truth, they are hated and cursed by Allah. Moral and intellectual deficiency. 2 more examples, 8:22 and 63:4. The kafirs lack reason. They are the worst of creatures, deaf and dumb, condemned as subhuman. They are full of deception and hypocrisy, an enemy deserving destruction and marked for divine punishment. Social and political exclusion. Quran 3:118, 5:51, 6:1, 9:28. That the kafirs wish Muslims harm, that loyalty is forbidden with them, and Muslims are forbidden from taking them as friends. They are enemies of Allah and unclean, najis. They have ritual impurity and are banned from holy sites such as Mecca. And finally, commands for violence. Quran 4:89. They are apostates and disbelievers, traitors. Kill them wherever you find them. 9:5. Kill them wherever you find them. 9:29. Perpetual warfare. Fight them until submission and jizya. And 47:4. Even behead. Strike their necks. The eternal consequences. Dehumanization, eternal torment, and the worst of creatures. They are condemned to hellfire, eternal punishment. For a more comprehensive list, see 500 problematic verses in the Quran. This can be found on the Perspectives on Islam website, .info. 4. Muhammad's example, how the Prophet treated the kafir. Muhammad's contempt for unbelievers is like that of Allah's and only intensified after his migration to Medina, where for the first time he encountered substantial Jewish communities. In the early verses of Mecca, there is no open Jew hatred, only reminders that they had disobeyed their prophets. At that time, Muhammad believed that they would accept him as prophet, but they did not. When that rejection became clear, the Quran changed as well, becoming even more anti-Semitic than Mein Kampf. Hadith. Muslims 1767a. I will expel the Jews and Christians from the Arabian Peninsula. That is exactly what happened. And Hadith, Bukhari 6924. I've been commanded to fight the people until they say there is no God but Allah. And the Life of Muhammad by Ibn Ishaq. Within 5 years of Muhammad's migration to Medina, all members of the 3 resident Jewish tribes had been either exiled or executed. Muhammad fought with all his Kafir neighbors, often traveling hundreds of miles to do so. 5. Codified in law. How Sharia treats the Kafir. Islamic jurisprudence is not a recent invention. It is the system commanded in the Quran and detailed further in the Hadith of Muhammad, a system referred to in Quran 45:18 as the ordained way of Islam. This is what Muslims call Sharia, not just religious rules, but a civilizational model governing belief, law, warfare, marriage, speech, commerce, taxation, personal behavior, and allegiance. Sharia is binding on Muslims and sets out a different legal status for Kafirs with fewer rights and distinct obligations. These distinctions are not optional, cultural, or historical. They are codified doctrine as law. Sharia underpins all of Islam and cannot be separated from it. Quran 45:18. We have put you, O Muhammad, on a plain way, that is Sharia. Our commandment, like the one we have commanded our messengers before you, so follow you that, Islamic monotheism and its laws, and follow not the desires of those who know not. Reliance of the Traveler, a classic manual of sacred law, gives us more examples. From Book O, which is Justice, Section 9. Jihad means to war against non-Muslims. 9.8. Jihad is a communal obligation. 8.7. Acts that entail leaving Islam. A Muslim can be executed for leaving Islam. 012. There is no expiation for a Muslim who kills a non-Muslim without cause or an apostate from Islam. 11.1-11. Dhimmi rules. A non-Muslim subject may live under Islamic rule by paying the jizya, living as a second-class subject. 24.2e. A non-Muslim's testimony is not accepted against a Muslim in an Islamic court. And M420913 and K32.4, which is in Arabic only, a Muslim woman may not marry a Kafir man. Sexual access is permitted to female captives. These rulings are derived directly from the foundational texts of Islam, the Quran, the Hadith, and centuries of legal consensus, ijma, across all four Sunni schools of law. 6. Migration and the Islamic principle of al-wala wal-bara, loyalty and enmity. Islam, Sharia, has very detailed rules about migration. A Muslim is not supposed to remain in the land of the Kafir unless he strives to bring it under Islamic rule. From Al-Wala wal-Bara by Muhammad Sayyid al-Qahtani. Quote, the abode of disbelief, Dar al-Kufr, is land ruled by the Kafirs, in which the laws of the Kafirs are supreme and political power is in their hands, even though Muslims may be the majority. The abode of Islam is any land that is ruled by Muslims, where Sharia is the supreme law, and the Muslims hold political power. It is Dar al-Islam, even if the majority of the population are Kafirs, so long as the Muslims rule it according to Sharia. Those who would emigrate to non-Muslim lands in search of wealth or prosperity to live under their protection, while they were able to go live amongst the Muslims in their own land, but still do not withdraw themselves from the disbelievers. Such people are not far from the fold of disbelief, and we can find no possible excuse for them. Asserting one's religion does not mean that you simply leave people to worship whatever they please without comment like the Christians and Jews do. It means that you must clearly and plainly disapprove of what they worship, and show enmity towards the disbelievers. Failing this, there is no assertion of Islam. If you are unable to assert your religion or avoid supporting them, then it is not permitted to venture among them for trading purposes. The subject has been addressed by the scholars, and the relevant support for their position will be found in the Prophet's hadith. Allah has required all believers to uphold their faith and oppose the disbelievers. Nothing is allowed to undermine or interfere with these obligations, unquote. Consistent with these teachings, the report Ongoing Concerns about Muslim American Mosques and Events details 153 Muslim American events in 28 states and Washington, D.C., inciting hatred and calls to violence or support for Islamic Jihad. 97 of these events were at Friday sermons. Muhammad said, "There is no migration after the conquest of Mecca, but there is jihad and intention, and when you are called to arms, then go forth." Consequences. In doctrine, in history, and today, the consistent derogation of Kafirs in the Quran and Hadith is not limited to doctrine. It has guided the actions of the devout both historically and to this day. While modern analysts often explain hostility towards non-Muslims through the lens of politics, colonialism, or economics, Islamic texts make clear that the core issue is theological, contempt for the Kafir. This contempt has been institutionalized in law, taught as virtue, and passed down through countless generations. Below are current manifestations of this doctrinal hatred. 1. Anti-Jewish violence in Western cities. Attacks on Jews in Toronto, Sydney, London, Western university campuses are typically attributed to Middle East tensions. But in Islamic doctrine, Jews are uniquely despised as those whom Allah has cursed and with whom he is angry. This doctrine precedes any modern political conflict that may be engineered to enforce it. 2. Persecution of Kafirs in Muslim lands. Church bombings, arrests for blasphemy, and massacres of Christians in countries like Pakistan, Egypt, Syria, and Nigeria reflect a deep-seated belief that Christians, though allowed to live under Islamic rule as dhimmis, are Kafirs who must submit or suffer consequences. 3. Execution and threats against blasphemers and apostates. The case of Salman Rushdie and many ex-Muslims in hiding reflects a hadith-backed ruling. Whoever changes his religion, kill him. Apostates are seen as even worse than Kafirs because they have rejected Allah after knowing him. Converts to Islam are sometimes called reverts, underscoring the Islamic belief that all humans are born Muslim. 4. Suppression of criticism in the West. From censorship on social media to physical attacks on cartoonists and writers, Western societies are increasingly enforcing Islamic blasphemy norms under the pretext of supporting diversity and inclusion. Criticism of Islam by Kafirs is not tolerated because it undermines the supremacy of Islam. 5. Islamic outreach in public institutions. Events in Western schools, institutions, museums, and public spaces that promote hijab, mosque visits, and Islam awareness as diversity or interfaith initiatives align directly with the Islamic obligation of dawah, the call to Islam. This includes initiatives such as common word events, spoken of later in chapter 8.3. Far from being neutral, these efforts reflect the Quranic command to make Islam prevail over all religion. Academic writings on Islam often sidestep words like kafir, jihad, or dhimmi in their original doctrinal context. Instead, terms are softened, reinterpreted, or obscured behind abstract theory. Summary. Why the Kafir doctrine cannot be ignored. It's worth noting that the word Kafir is rarely capitalized, much like the word dog. Even Wikipedia, which automatically capitalizes most proper nouns, keeps Kafir in lowercase. It is a subtle way of diminishing the status of the non-Muslim. And yet, in Islamic doctrine, this word refers to the entire non-Muslim world, billions of human beings. That's why I and others choose to capitalize Kafir, to reflect both the scale of its meaning and the people it describes. Islamic doctrine, with its systematically entrenched contempt for the Kafir, explains far more about workplace dynamics, government policy, and intergroup relations than many Westerners realize, yet it is routinely overlooked by authorities. Terms like Kafir are translated vaguely or avoided altogether, especially in academia and even in national security contexts, not for the sake of accuracy, but to avoid discomfort. In the process, doctrine is bowdlerized and misrepresented, sometimes by influential Kafirs themselves, in the service of a doctrine that condemns them. Another overlooked but vital aspect of Islamic doctrine is the permission to deceive the Kafir when it serves the interests of Islam. This is not only allowed, it is endorsed in a wide variety of circumstances. Classical commentaries, tafsir, confirm that Muslims may show outward friendliness while concealing inner loyalty to the Ummah. This includes doctrinal concepts such as taqiyya, to lie strategically, hurriya, to deceive, kitman, omitting part of the truth, and maruna, to suspend Sharia temporarily. The result is a sanctioned double standard, one for Muslims, another for Kafirs. This doctrinal double standard, introduced here, will reappear in later chapters, reflecting Islamic approaches to law, economics, and civil interaction in the West. In every case, the motive, though unacknowledged, is not hidden. It is doctrinal. The common thread is not grievance, poverty, or geopolitics. It is the enduring, unambiguous contempt for the Kafir as mandated in Islam's foundational texts. Since Muslims are taught to accept the Quran's directives regarding the Kafir and to live in accordance with them, this should not be unexpected. What is less expected is the West's tendency to seek alternative explanations, even as Islamic law gains influence in Western courts, classrooms, and public spaces. Understanding why this persists requires first addressing a more fundamental issue, the Islamic concept of truth itself.